Well, good evening. Welcome to Grover Hill Zion United Methodist Church's Thursday evening devotions from the kitchen table, where we've been talking now for many weeks now about the story behind some of the great hymns of the church. Some of the stories were written because of some tragedy that the author was experiencing or had gone through or was continuing to go through. Some were written out of great joy, and some were written to just express and share their faith. And all of these songs can be very important and very helpful for us in our faith journey as well. Well, this evening's hymn that we're talking about, and by the way, it's playing in the background, perhaps you can hear it. It's titled, God Leads Us Along. God Leads Us Along. It's a great hymn. It's an older hymn. Hymns like these and many of the older hymns have helped bring multitudes, millions and millions of people to faith. And we've quit using many of these older hymns. And today, the newer music has kind of taken over. And there's some great modern hymns as well, or modern songs as well. But it seems a shame. I guess everything changes, but it's almost like throwing the baby out with the bathwater when we don't use some of these old hymns. And of course, I guess there's so many of them you can't use them all. But I encourage you to take and look this up on a video on YouTube or some other place and just listen to it. You'll be blessed if you do that. But God Leads Us Along is the title of this song, as I said. This song is a reminder that God's providence is still with us, even in our difficult moments. No matter what we're going through, good times, bad times, times that break our heart, times that we just think we can't make it anymore. God is with us in those times. There are moments when we feel like God has abandoned us. You ever felt that way? I would guess you have. I think Jesus even kind of felt that way when he was on the cross, saying, "Why have you forsaken me?" Of course, that's open for debate, I guess. But you get the idea. You get the feeling. Sometimes we feel like God has forgotten about us and has abandoned us. And we need to know that God is still with us as we go through difficult times. He's promised that he'll never leave us or forsake us. Psalm 23, that he'll be with us as we pass through the valley of the shadow of death. The author of this song, God Leads Us Along, his name is George A. Young. He was a rural preacher and a carpenter who humbly served the Lord on a meager salary. Instead of complaining about his situation, George Young and his family served the Lord as loyal servants. This preacher, through their meager salary and resources, eventually managed to construct a house on their own. And they were happy to have their own house, just like any of us would be happy to have our own house. Unfortunately, while Young was away holding meetings in another area, some bad people decided to make life difficult for this humble preacher, this humble servant of God. They burnt the house down, so there was nothing left but ashes. Instead of complaining and blaming God for not preventing this tragic event, George Young never lost his faith in the Lord. It is out of his tragedy that he wrote this hymn that continues to bless those of us who hear it to this very day. I'm only going to just share with you, read for you the first verse. By the way, this hymn was written in 1903, so it's been a very beautiful hymn for many, many years. It's touched many hearts and lives. He writes in the first verse, in shady green pastures, so rich and so sweet, God leads his dear children along. Where the water's cool flow bathes the weary one's feet, God leads his dear children along. Some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. Isn't that a beautiful reminder? And it gets even better than that. But that's a wonderful reminder that God is with us even when we go through difficult times. Some more of the story is that a man by the name of Haldar Lilienus, founder of Lilienus Publishing Company, which is a music publishing company, is one person whose life was impacted by this song. He had just arrived in the United States from Scandinavia. The first years of his life in the United States were hard, but a kind lady befriended him and taught him the English language. The same woman also introduced Haldar to Christ. And the lady would sing this song, God Leads Us Along, to comfort him. Later in life, when he was an adult, he remembered this song had been very special to him in his time of need. And he wanted to find out something about the author, George A. Young. Unfortunately, he discovered that Mr. Young had died. However, he managed to locate his widow who was living in a nearby town. Haldar went to this town and managed to locate Young's widow, who was then living in a poorhouse. Young's widow told him of her life with her husband and how God gave them a wonderful life together until her husband passed away. She told him that God had led her to that town and she was excited and glad about it. And she is reported to have added, "Isn't it wonderful that God leads his children day by day and step by step?" Never once complaining about her humble life, she told Haldar that she loved the fact that she was able to assist the people in that town who were in need. And Haldar was so moved by this testimony and excited that he had found more than just the story of the songwriter, but also found a woman who had faithfully surrendered herself to God's will. I pray that God will give me and you the same faith this woman and her husband had, who were so committed to God's work that they appeared to brush away the difficult and humble life that they lived. We wonder about God leading us along, don't we? And what the scriptures say about that? Listen, there are many verses that talk about God leading us along. Let me just close here with David's psalm from Proverbs 25, verses 4 and 5. David wrote many of these psalms. We know that David, as a shepherd boy, lived a life of danger, constant danger. And even when he became the greatest king Israel had known, he still lived a life of fear and danger. And so he writes in Psalm 25, "Make me to know your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me. For you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." Well, have a great and blessed week.